I may stop putting numbers in. Finding out who's first to call out the number may keep you looking. We now turn to the Gospel of Matthew, the 10th chapter, the 24th verse. If you get it, holler, call it out. 9? Okay. It's kind of like things in Genesis, you know. It's felt kind of silly putting the creation story in and doing page 1, but that's where it was. We're picking up again. A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher. But if they called the master of the house Beelzebub, which they did call Jesus, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell it in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both body and soul in hell. Are 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be the ones of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. These are hard words. A lot of different things going on. Jesus has just called the disciples together, sent them out, brought them back, and now he's going to go start heading, not yet, but heading toward the confrontation. It's also true that Matthew has a vested interest in making these verses solidly clear to the people of his church. They're, as near as we can tell, Jewish Christians, probably up in Galilee, different from John's group, much more Jewish-oriented. Is Jesus really the Messiah? Yes, he is. We don't care if you don't agree in the synagogue. He really is the Messiah. We can prove it. See, right here. And so, salted through this is both Jesus getting his disciples ready for tough times and Matthew getting people 2-3 generations later ready for the separation that's coming between synagogue and church, and that Jewish Christians especially will feel the pull. Many of you have friends, some of you have made this journey yourselves into Christian faith from another religion. And the question comes, whether you come from a different denomination of Christianity or a different faith entirely, what do you do when you differ from your family of origin about God? I have to remind my best friend since 4th grade periodically. He's now retired from the Air Force Academy, living in the shadow of the sacred spot in Colorado Springs in his retirement. And he periodically writes me all head up about stuff. And I go, Paul, we always disagreed about this. You were brought up Roman Catholic. I was brought up Baptist. We're not going to see alike. We never have. It's okay. But you see, when you start to differ with people, and especially if you're trying to push for a new way, and Jesus is pushing for that new way, open to everybody, not just to Jews, but to everybody on earth, the way to experience God's grace by surrender, as Paul says, even earlier than this gospel, by being baptized. And notice the imagery. You get buried in baptism. You get brought up to new life. It's no accident that the early church, 90% of the time, immersed. They put people in the water. If you were sick, they took 10, 15, 20 gallons of water, and they got 2 different people, and they threw it on top of you and made sure you got washed really wet. Sprinkling and pouring were for the ill and for little bitty kids whose parents wanted them included. And it's still valid. And it's very different than what Paul talks about. There is a separation going on here in Matthew's time, and there's a separation Jesus is pushing for, calling Israel to come follow this new way, but knowing that most of them won't. And still going forward, knowing that too many people are invested in the temples and the synagogues and the schools, and they've got their way figured out, thank you very much, and don't tell us how to do it different. When he comes and says to the thief on the cross, you'll be with me today in paradise, he breaks all the rules. And so when you're a rule breaker, you get in trouble. And these early Christians, these early followers of Jesus, these early compatriots of Matthew, these people in Rome that Paul is writing to, they're on a new course. And they have real problems sometimes with those they love and those they have to leave behind. I have heard wonderful stories here of cooperation across the faith traditions. And I always like to work with our 2 temples when we do International Peace Day. Not very often a Christian minister gets to stand in front of the Peace Goddess statue at the Soto Zen Temple and do the prayer. And then, of course, you have to do a prayer that includes everybody. It's not just enough to say we're right in our corner. You also have to figure a way to talk to your neighbors. And then it's up to them if they want to talk to you. It's like some of the great stories of how people have reconciled in families where they have differing religious traditions. And by the way, let's name some informal religious traditions. First of all, let's talk about boats. How many people worship the boat in their parking spot? How many people have a sacred shrine for the boat? How many people bought a pickup truck big enough to haul the boat? Now, all of that strikes me as religious devotion. Then you can also have the people of the suntan cult. They go down to the beach and they worship looking like they've been on the beach all the time. And of course some of them have. And then of course some of them stay on the beach too long and they start to show their age and a little bit more. And so you have a whole range of people. I love our neighborhood beach though. because there are so many different shapes and kinds and ages of people there. I mean, I used to think I was a pretty large person. And then I also found out what tiny is, for adults. And it's all of this wonderful variety. But let's face it, another religion in Hawaii is the beach. Okay? And all things the beach associated. From the tan, the clothes, the food, the beer that you're not supposed to have but everybody does. All this kind of stuff. And so part of it is that we're not just talking about how people came out of Shinto or Buddhism or Jehovah's Witness or Mormons, Roman Catholic, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Baptist, disciples in my case, and became members of this more open body. But we're also talking about the stress it had. The times people said, nah, we're not doing it that way. And I still love one quote, and I can say it because she's not the only person I've heard say it in my career, but there's a person here who said it. Okay, if you're going to be a Catholic, be the best one you know how to be. You have my blessing. Go. That's the mark of being able to move on and let your folks, your family, your friends, stay in relationship if they choose to. This week we had a surprise. Our granddaughter has declared herself non-binary and has changed their name to Devin. I have 7 grandchildren. One of them is a staunch Unitarian, except she claims to be a Unitarian agnostic and still goes to church. And their name now is Devin. As you can tell, I'm having a little part of trouble stretching, which is interesting because I'm in an open and affirming church. But hey, this is my granddaughter here,
It'll be okay. I had 2 of them do the same thing.
Yeah, I know. And there will be more of us. And that doesn't have to be a separation. But it often is. And we have lived in a society that's been way too separated in the last even 10, 20, 30 years, where people chose up sides. If God keeps track of trash birds and trash fish and every little crab on the beach, don't you suppose God can take care of you? And don't you suppose that God can take care of your wacko grandchild, who I am convinced will come through some other formational stuff, and I'll still find out what they're like in another 5 years. But whatever changes are coming, it's also nice to know that, sparrows really don't do a whole lot. They chase each other, they peck seeds, they make baby sparrows, they don't migrate, they just look for whatever's there. Sparrows are kind of the everywhere bird. There's a sparrow practically in every continent except Antarctica. And they have, as you noticed, been shipped various places. If God can keep track of sparrows and tiny crabs and fish and every leaf on every tree, don't you suppose God is fully capable to help you? Now, there's only 2 barriers. Either you think you're too bad, God wouldn't care about me, I've done horrible, terrible things, to which I have a friend who always says, what could you do that God would not still love you? God is love. God can't change. Or the other one is, I'm too good. I'm already perfect, or at least 90% so. I've lived 90%, 80%, 70% of my life, and I think I've done pretty well. And I've polished my apple pretty good, and it's pretty shiny, and I think I've done okay. Yeah? Are you sure about that? It's too glib to just read, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Until you take a look at your own life and you realize it's all too true. Every one of us has fallen short. The good news, every one of us has a way back now. The same God that cares about sparrows knows all about us and loves us anyway. We are worth a whole lot more than that flock of birds.